Broadcasting live from the Business Radio X studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome to another exciting and informative edition of Atlanta Business Radio. This is a very special one, Lee. We're broadcasting live from Georgia State University here at the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. And we're hitting our afternoon episode. We've already got a couple episodes under our belt. This one is going to be fantastic. We've got a studio full. We have more paparazzi. We got fans. We got all kinds of stuff going on here. First up on this episode, please join me in welcoming to the broadcast Director, WomenLead, and Professor of Legal Studies, Nancy Mansfield. How are you?
Good afternoon. Glad to be here.
Well, Nancy, before we get too far into things, do you mind talking a little bit about WomenLead, mission, purpose, how you serving folks?
Sure. The WomenLead program launched at Georgia State University in the spring of 2015, so we're just starting our fifth year. And the mission of this program is totally centered on student success, saying that we have a program where we empower undergraduate women to aspire to and achieve leadership roles. We're putting them on a trajectory for success and building connections between college to their careers.
So she's answered that question before.
That wasn't the first time? You don't think that was an ad lib?
I think I have that one memorized. You can try another one on me this time.
Well, how did it come about? What was the impetus?
This is a great story. The impetus for WomenLead was an alum of Georgia State University. An angel investor came to the university and said, I want to do something that will level the playing field for women. And she really gave us carte blanche. So our dean had a town hall meeting. We had about 23 faculty and professional staff show up back in 2014 and brainstorm, what could we do to level the playing field? And being an academic, my real interest was around a 4-credit program for young women. And the rest is sort of history. We put it together, got great advice with some other alums of Georgia State who had run women's programs at Coca-Cola. We wanted to make sure that the academic program would resonate with the business community. So once the program was designed, the angel investor said, this looks great. We had tremendous support from President Becker and also from Provost Risa Palm, and launched the program with an inaugural group of 25 young women in the spring of 2015. That's the genesis.
So now, when you were rolling it out, was it something that the women students were embracing, or did it take a little bit of time to get some traction? Well, I'll brag a little bit. I think the women embraced that first class filled up almost overnight. And a lot of things at the university take a long time to happen, but we have grown at warp speed. So we've added from that first WomenLead in Business section, a second section of WomenLead in Business. And then we added a section of WomenLead in STEM and the sciences. And our fourth section is WomenLead in Policy and Politics. So we now have 100 great women come through the program every semester, so 200 a year. And in a short, just over 4 years, 600 graduates of the program. Wow. So that's, a big success to celebrate in terms of numbers as well as what the students are accomplishing. So now what are the nuts and bolts of the course? What are they learning?
I would say that the best way to describe the WomenLead course is that it's an experiential learning course where we try to make the path for students between the classroom and the community where there are no walls. And we do that through a series of signature experiences. And I'll come back and talk about those in a minute. But the pillars for the curriculum are all around building confidence. That's the theme that we heard from our students. So we're interested in building their confidence in self, in who they are, in their self-efficacy. We want to build their confidence in the professional world of work as they begin to think about leaving Georgia State and moving into their careers. and then building confidence in their ability to make a real contribution to their community, be that family, be it the city they live in, and really to take on the world. So we're building confidence, and the way we do that is through lots of hands-on learning, networking, corporate visits, engagement interviews, and also through a lot of self-reflection. So that we find that with students, really with all of us, if you stop, pause, take a moment to reflect, then that experience takes on even more meaning. It becomes a part of you.
Now, over the years, have you seen kind of some big transformations? Maybe some, I wouldn't name names, but some before and afters that maybe really made you proud?
Oh, all of our students make us proud, and we can see transformations on campus from semester to semester where students raise their hand and say, I'm going to sign up for this signature program as a good follow-up, or they may say, I'm going to apply for this fellowship, or they say, I'm going to raise my hand and participate in a great activity on campus like 1913 Society. So we see the evolution of making an impact on the campus. And then even more, so again, our graduates have been out maybe 3 years, and we're hearing back from them. There's a young graduate, I remember she sat on the front row in my class and said, really all I wanted was a job. But she's now at UPS and has received 3 promotions. Mm-hmm. We have another student who said, I'm going to dream big, and is working for a great tech company in Philadelphia, and she comes back to recruit. And these stories follow our students as we track them. They get in touch. Another woman from the inaugural class working for an accounting firm, they came back, these inaugural students, and served on a panel discussion for our current students to share their success in the workplace.
Now, are there any lessons for parents or students maybe that are in high school about WomenLead and that you can share that maybe can give them a jump start?
For parents, I guess, when they're looking at universities and a good fit for their children, first of all, I'd say hands off, but I would say look to see what do the students want, and also the more opportunities students can have for experiential learning, I think the better for their education. And I would include with that opportunities for research, opportunities to explore entrepreneurial interests, where it becomes a real hands-on university experience.
So who'd you bring with you today?
Oh, I brought 2 great colleagues. I hope you'll have a chance to visit with one of our students, Natsai Indabelli, who can tell you her career trajectory and where she's headed after graduation in May. She was in the WomenLead class in the fall of 2016. And then our colleague, Dr. Isabelle Moniouis, who has been with the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center Institute really since it launched, leading the way, teaching classes and working with students. And the great thing about having Isabelle here is that WomenLead has been successful at Georgia State because so many people have been willing to partner with us. And at Georgia State, there's this real entrepreneurial spirit across campus. When you hear about the different programs, everyone wants to get on board, and there's that feeling of, there are no silos. How can we work together for the success of the students?
All right, so we want to start with Natsai.
Natsai.
Okay, Natsai, tell us what you're up to.
Okay, so I recently co-founded an organization called Our Journey Through Code, and this is basically a community for women of color in computing, and we also have a web series portion where we're highlighting women of color in computing.
And then what was your experience like here at GSU?
So currently my graduating semester, my experience...
Oh, so you're still in school?
Still in school, actually, graduating in May. It has been a great experience, a lot of learning, definitely a lot of lessons, and also I think getting the opportunity to participate in programs such as WomenLead, where I think since my sophomore year there's so much that I learned from there and so many great lessons that I took and I've just continued with.
How did you even hear about WomenLead?
So I got an email. It was over the summer, and the first thing that stuck out to me was getting the chance to be in a class that's with women. So being a computer science major, I'm in a lot of very male-dominated classes.
Right.
And during
what's the ratio in your computer classes? of men to women?
Oh, my goodness. I think maybe in a class of about 50, if it's a good class, there'll be maybe 6 of us.
Wow, so 10%?
Less than 10% pretty much. And it's something that I thought I'd mentally prepared for freshman year coming in, until walking into my first Java programming class and looking around to sort of count, because you do that. And when really looking at it, I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So there's not
what
that
did I
many.
get myself into here?
Exactly. You have the moments going through the imposter syndrome. That's something that I definitely dealt with a lot, and really trying to understand that, okay, why do I feel this way? Am I supposed to be in here? And it took a lot, in the sense that having to really sit myself down and really say, well, I love programming, I love technology, and I have to essentially sit here and really create this space for me.
Now, do you have any theories of why women kind of either self-select out or are biased out of the opportunity in those kind of classes? Because at some point you were with peers, right, that are women, and that there were other people interested in this kind of stuff. At some point they weren't.
I think to a certain extent, when starting, there's an element of not being able to find role models. So hence the reason with our journey through code, that's why we're actually working on highlighting and showing that, hey, we're here too, and this is something that you can do. So I know when I essentially started, I had actually never really seen a female software engineer. I didn't even understand what a computer scientist was. And now I'm in the major and I understand that, okay, I get to create and help build technologies that actually touch everybody's lives. Mm-hmm. But we are still not yet in that position where we can see ourselves as people that are actually creating these technologies, even though we use them. We're still on the consumer side. So it's something I think that still plays a large role in that. And then there's also a very high dropout rate, with about maybe 56% of women leaving the industry. And that's because finding a community once you're in it, that's the next challenge. There are a lot of challenges essentially come from, it's a technically difficult major. The tech field, there's still those difficulties, but a lot of it is still dealing with maybe the imposter syndrome, dealing with some of the other things that you have to do to still assert yourself to say, hey, I'm here.
So now at some point you decided, I want to be the change, right? That I want to help facilitate this change.
Yes.
Now, was that part of the GSU entrepreneurship kind of initiative that's going on, that are encouraging entrepreneurship? Or like, what was the catalyst to, there's one thing to say, okay, this is happening, but another thing to say, I want to do something about it.
So with that, I would say growing up, I've always had a very entrepreneurial spirit, and it was, for me, I've reached a point in time where I'd heard the same narrative too many times. People leaving the major, a lot of women dropping out, and I thought, well, this year my motto was be the change that you'd like to see in the world. Mm-hmm. So this essentially for me was the year where I was saying, let me go ahead and let me change this, because if I'm going to be in this field, if I'm still going to go ahead and be looking and using all these technologies, this is time for us to go ahead and be also in the forefront and included in this conversation.
So then once you had that concept in your head, and then how did you start building the, the nuts and bolts of our journey through code? Like, do you get other women also involved, or this is a solo pursuit right now for you?
So our team is actually really interesting. So my co-founder is also another woman, and then essentially other people in the team, we have a lot of men in the team. So what happened was essentially pitching, talking to people, and also reaching out within my network. I reached out to Dr. Mansfield and told her, I have this idea. I really don't know how to go ahead starting this, because I'm also not a business major. What do we do? And she connected me to Dr. Nelson Pizarro. He's a social entrepreneurship professor at Georgia State, and from then on, we worked on a business plan. So there's been a lot of networking also within, using my network. There's also another CEO in the Atlanta area. Her name is Stephanie Jewett. So I also met her through the WomenLead class, and she's also another woman who sat me down and helped me with preparing. And a lot of it, I think we focused a lot on just doing and really focusing on our mission, and we're learning as we go. So there's been some mistakes, there's some things that we've gotten right, but it's just a learning process, and we're really heavily focused on what our mission is.
So now, what's your dream? How do you see this playing out?
So essentially with that, I know one lofty dream that we had in the beginning was to venture out into maybe even helping find or help other women fund their source or start their journey, as we would say it. So funneling more women to get into the major, and then working on really creating a community where we can not only get people into the field, but actually have that community of support, have that mentorship. If you need help with something, if you need finding that direction or even advice, things that I've essentially also struggled with and other women struggle with, having a place to turn to and say, hey, I'm trying to negotiate this, or are there any other career options that I can still explore? What can I do? So we want to be able to create that community.
As like a safe place for you to kind of be vulnerable, because you said it was a difficult, like this is a difficult major.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of peers that you can trust and be more vulnerable maybe than you would if you're going to a guy for help, where they might dismiss it. Oh, that's why there's no women in this.
Definitely. But I think also with what you mentioned, also creating a space to facilitate that conversation, to say, hey, well, this is what we go through. This is, what happens, because there's no use in creating an exclusive community, because we strongly believe that you can't create inclusion by exclusion. So at the end of the day, we're not going into the work field to work by ourselves. We do need to ensure that the majority of the tech population is also included in this conversation.
So now, is there a website? Is there a place for you right now? Like, where are you at? What stage are you at?
So we have our website. So that's ourjourneythroughcode.com. And then we also have our social media platforms. So on Twitter and on Instagram, that's OJT Code. And on LinkedIn, we're also on LinkedIn. So that's Our Journey Through Code.
Nancy, you must be so proud.
Oh, I'm beaming right here beside Nancy. And she's very modest about her accomplishments, but she's had an extraordinary career at Georgia State, and she's always interested in other people's success. And I think this paying it forward was a part of her DNA before even WomenLead. But then she's just taken off the last 2 years, and I can't wait to see where Our Journey Through Code goes, as well as her career as she moves to San Francisco in the fall.
Good stuff. Well, who else do you bring?
But the other guest that we have for the show today is Dr. Isabelle Moniouis. And Isabelle has a PhD from Georgia State and works as a professor in the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute. And she's really been glued at the hip with us since the beginning. I remember we had coffee when you were still completing your graduate work, and we were sharing ideas about WomenLead, and Isabelle had so much experience. I mean, I was running a startup for the first 4 years, so she was a great advisor. And then, as I said, and then now a partner as we move WomenLead ahead, when hopefully adding a WomenLead and Entrepreneurship course.
Well, Isabelle, welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
Very good. Well, tell us about your GSU journey.
Wow. So I joke about it, and I refer to it as my midlife crisis. I spent quite a bit of time in corporate America, mostly in risk management and training and development. And then I became an accidental entrepreneur for about a little bit over a decade. And then, but I had a private consulting practice doing a lot of change management work, innovation consulting for Fortune 500 companies. And I noticed that we were solving the same problems over and over again. And even though it's a great business model, because when it breaks, they call you back, I suspected that if we did it right the first time, perhaps we'd be solving different problems. And so I had the luxury to step away and decided to go to Georgia State and use the time to do some research and find out how could organizations learn. We knew how to help people learn. We knew how to complete projects. We knew how to improve processes. But somehow, as I said, the problems keep recurring. And I wasn't sure that organizations could learn. So I decided to go back and find out and learn. But what I didn't anticipate is that I would fall in love with academia all over again. And I remembered what it was like to be a student. And I got my master's in economics and my MBA very, very early. I had very little job experience at that time. And I could look back and see how much I had matured, how much more I knew. And I wanted an opportunity to bring this to the classroom, the combination of that experience, and to maybe help create a bridge for today's students.
Because that's a different kind of perspective you had now.
Yeah, so I'm actually a professor of practice. So yes, I do some research, but one of the different perspectives that I bring to the table is a perspective of somebody who spent a decade in corporate America and a decade as an entrepreneur. So when we work with students, and I love what Nancy said about making sure that they can lead themselves, but also lead a team and lead a project and be leaders in their community, we want to make sure that they are best prepared to be agents of change when they actually get a job.
So now, how important is that, the impact that you make? Like, how important is that to transfer that to the student or to the employee?
That's the reason to go to work.
But not everybody has that.
So actually, so I think you'll find that many of my colleagues, and definitely my colleagues for WomenLead, this is one of the things, one of the values that we share, making sure that the students get the benefit of our experience, the successes and the failures that we hope they won't repeat, but also making sure that they get the benefit of our networks, and make sure again that this experience, their education is extremely practical. So we're looking at doing this with different lenses, but that bridge, that college to career bridge, is perhaps one of the most important. And actually, we almost reverse engineer it, right? We look at what are the competencies that they need to be successful, whether it is leadership, whether it's teaming, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's the ability to express themselves, to create, to innovate. And we work our way back to what kind of experiences we need to design in the classroom, so that when they graduate, not only have they acquired those skills, but they have a portfolio of projects and prototypes, and to actually show what they've accomplished. And more importantly, they have the confidence to know that they can succeed.
And that's an important component of this Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute, is giving the students that portfolio of actual work,
yes,
not just a piece of paper that's a degree that says I'm this or that, right?
So it's funny you should say that. So the way I think of it, you can look at entrepreneurship, innovation, education, especially for women, through 4 different lenses, right? You could learn about entrepreneurship, and that would be the equivalent of watching Shark Tank or interviewing an entrepreneur, right? You could learn for entrepreneurship, which is, again, some of the things that we do to make sure that those students that we work with can reach back to their own lived experience and identify problems that are worth solving and actually try to create a venture. But you could also learn through entrepreneurship. It's a great vehicle to actually find out who you are and to have sort of this evolution of your identity. I see my students, when they start the semester, they hold themselves, their head is bent, they're not making really eye contact, their spine is bent. And by the end of the semester, they're ready to take on the world, and you sit and they look at you straight in the eyes and they stand straight. And I noticed that they've changed their auto signature. At the beginning, they're students, but by the end of the semester, they are founders of something.
That's right.
And something
CEO.
that they can show. But more importantly, they can actually show. They have prototypes. They've had interviews. They have websites. They have followers. And some of them, they've actually made some cash. And so I keep joking that this is the program where you actually make more money than you spend to go to school.
And then, but that's very innovative, right? To use your college time as actually doing things that make you money immediately, as opposed to some future state.
So it's one of the things that I don't think I knew before I started teaching a few years ago. But our students are incredible in terms of their entrepreneurial grit. They have a level of resilience, a level of creativity. And I find that if you just give them the tool and a little bit of runway, you'd be amazed about what they can create. And so I teach, but I must confess, I learn an awful lot from them as well.
Now, how important do you think, or how unique is the GSU kind of diverse student population when it comes to this? And how does that come into play with the entrepreneurship program?
So we have a very diverse student population, and it almost doesn't matter which lens you look at in terms of diversity. We have a majority a female population. We have a large majority of color, but we also have students who come from all different walks of life. So we have students who are first generation college students. We have quite a bit of those. And so it doesn't matter which lens you look at, whether it's economic or social or cultural or language, you will find that it's very diverse. And I will say, I won't say it's our secret sauce because I think the secret is out, but I would say it's one of our strengths. So in today's economy, as Natsai said, you don't work by yourself, right? You don't work alone. And you have to learn to work with a diverse group of people. And part of the work that we do is through projects where they actually have to learn to work effectively or to lead effectively. Groups that are so diverse that, again, by the time they graduate, that's one of the skills that they've acquired.
Right, they've already done it for years when they start, as opposed to other people who graduate and this is the first time they've been around this kind of diversity.
Yeah, and one of the ways in which they do this, I go back to something that Nancy talked about, is that they learn who they are. So one of the things that they learn is they learn to appreciate their own diversity. So in some corners, people will think of diversity as a flaw, and we make it a feature. Some people think of diversity as a barrier, and we make it a bridge of opportunity. And so they learn to own and appreciate their own diversity, and that also allows them to empathize at a different level with others who may be different in different ways, but then they can connect. And in that way, they build stronger teams. They actually bring more innovative solutions, and they also sometimes are able to uncover overlooked market because they're in places or they look through lenses that other people don't. And so once they can take this, whether or not that initial venture is successful, of course I cheer for it to be successful, and some of them are. But even if it's not, this is what I would think is the best job training for the 21st century, so that when they get to the job market, they actually are that much farther ahead, not just in the technical skills that they acquire, like Natsai, but in all of the interpersonal skills that they actually have already practiced when they go to work on the job market.
So now, how did WomenLead get on your radar?
So first of all, I confess I'm a huge fan. So WomenLead got on my radar because both Nancy and Pam Allen, who's the Associate Director of the WomenLead program, are both colleagues and friends, and reached out to me to be part of the mentor team for the almost initial WomenLead class. And I fell in love with the students. I fell in love with the work that they were doing.
So this was when you were an entrepreneur?
Yes. That was before I joined Georgia State as a professor. And I thought that it was such an important initiative. I think that, especially for those of us who have been in the workforce as women, we understand that it takes, the expression says it takes a village. It's not a bad expression, but it certainly takes a support system, and it also takes some very unique strategies. And many of us have had to learn to develop those strategies by trial and error. And we're really committed to making sure that our students can benefit from our experience, and that they can start where we ended, and take the next lead, the next step in the journey. And so when the opportunity came up, whether it was being a mentor, which again, anybody who's resonates with our message, I encourage you to reach out to us and to contact us. We have mentorship opportunities, whether it's networking, practicing networking. The students are phenomenal. And when Nancy and I talked about the possibility of another section of WomenLead in Entrepreneurship and Innovation, I knew that was an opportunity I could not pass on.
So now that you've kind of experienced it from the entrepreneur standpoint and the academic standpoint, how do you see it evolving as being part of the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute?
So it's actually unfortunate that women face, minorities in general, but women in particular face unique challenges in entrepreneurship. It's interesting because they actually start more businesses. They start businesses at a faster rate than anybody else. But yet institutional resources are not available to them at the same rate. And
when you say that, are you saying funding?
Among other things. But yes, I mean, the same biases that explain why women only get 2% of VC funding and women of color only get 0.2% of VC funding, those same institutional barriers actually apply to all the different stages, right? It's also the access to incubators, to accelerators. It's the way mentors respond to them. It's oftentimes the way people respond to their business ideas. Oftentimes I hear successful women entrepreneurs talk about how people are looking for the founder because they don't believe that they're the founder. Or they actually, if they talk about a gendered product, usually the founders, the VC will say, I need a minute. I need to talk to my wife or my secretary to see if it's a good product because I have no idea what you're talking about. And those are some of the best cases, right? And so they get dismissed, underestimated. So it's both it's a curse, but it's also an opportunity, right? So when you underestimate it, it allows you to it allows you to surprise, and in that surprise, you can shift a relationship. But understanding that, we realize that it's really important that we develop some understanding and some fluency with the unique strategies that women entrepreneurs need. So the good news is we have a lot of allies, and we have a lot of allies who don't face the same problem and they want to help. But their conventional wisdom, and oftentimes the suggestions that they will make, will not work for us. In fact, they may backfire. And so it's really critical that we have a candid conversation about what those institutional barriers are, so that we can develop the appropriate strategies, train our students, knowing full well that when they get in those positions of leadership, they can change the game. They can change who gets funding. They can change, who gets support. But this is where we are. We're in that place where we have to make that transition, and it's a perfect fit, because I don't know that you can talk about leadership for women without talking about entrepreneurship and innovation, right? Without talking about economic mobility and leadership from that perspective. And so it was a perfect next step in the curriculum for WomenLead, because again, leadership for women absolutely includes entrepreneurship and innovation.
And GSU is kind of unique in that this entrepreneurship kind of theme is being spread across the whole entire university.
We are quite proud of that. So
that's a big deal, right?
It is, because we actually have a huge footprint. I mean, if you drive around Atlanta, you may have noticed we have a huge footprint.
Well, isn't it the largest university in Georgia?
Over 50,000 students.
Right. Yeah, it's insane, right? And so, yes, we actually, President Becker, who gives us a lot of institutional support, has a vision that entrepreneurship innovation is for everybody at Georgia State. That includes every student, regardless of major. The business department does not have a monopoly on entrepreneurship innovation, as you can see. And that also extends to the staff and the faculty. So I think our ambition is to be an entrepreneurial university, and to make sure that those sort of 21st century skills permeate not just what we teach, but how we teach.
And then for you personally, this must resonate with you, coming from your background in change management and innovation. This goes hand in hand, right?
I'm a happy camper.
Right?
So yes, absolutely. So it's a bit of a dream come true. Everybody talks about the ivory tower. But again, we can ask Nancy, when you think about programs like WomenLead, you can appreciate that we are listening to what the market is telling us. We're listening to what the students are asking for, and we're making the changes. And that level of partnership with the industry in terms of what they need, with the students in terms of co-creating. I mean, I'll confess, when we decided to create, which again, we're planning sort of this entrepreneurship innovation version of a section of WomenLead, one of my first calls was to Natsai. And I said, Natsai, we need to talk. Because who else would be better positioned to help us co-design and to make sure that the students' voices are best represented and an integral part of the design of how the course lands. So our commitment is not just to deliver incredibly powerful learning experiences, transformative learning, but our commitment is to continue to learn. And because technology is changing and the market is changing and our students are growing, and the only way we can do this is in partnership with them.
And then also you need partnership with the enterprise companies and businesses around the community. Are you getting buy-in from them as well?
We're getting a lot of support, and it's quite amazing to see. The vision and the mission for WomenLead resonates so strongly that we have a lot of people in the community, women and men, by the way, who want to be a part of it. And they're coming to coach the students. They're coming to participate in our events. They're coming to sometimes speak and share their experience. And so it's been a wonderful bridge. And it's actually a two-way bridge, because they go back and they tell us how impressed they've been, the students, and how grateful they've been for the opportunity to give back. I have to say, Nancy runs this power networking event, which was on the first event I attended. And as an attendee, the experience was incredible. I mean, you there for a short period and you felt like you contributed the world. And I don't know, did you want to say a little bit more about that, Nancy?
Please share.
So power networking is really almost like speed dating. And we bring in 40 or so executives, leaders from throughout the community, and then our 100 students. And we literally ring a bell every 5 minutes. The students have a program. They've done research on the community leaders who are there, and then they rotate every 5 minutes and get to practice making that eye contact, a handshake, and they have questions that they've prepared to ask about careers, what impediments you faced, what is the best advice you can give me at this point in my journey. And what's interesting is before the event, so many of the students say, Professor Mansfield, I've never done this before. I have no idea what I'm doing. We give them some instructions, and I say, it just takes practice. And by the end of the session, they're beaming. They talk about the people that they've met, and they say two things. I have confidence now if I walk into a meeting or a professional group that I can go up and introduce myself and engage in a conversation. And after events like this, also students sometimes say, Nancy, I want to come back one day and be that person. And that's the transformative element of a program like WomenLead. I know we talked about, Natsai, you had said there's a problem sometimes of role models. And I was sort of the first wave of feminists back in the 70s when I was in college. At least there are a few more role models today, but in corporate America, at the very top, I think, in the C-suite, 4% women of color. So one of my goals was to light that spark of self-awareness in our students, but also present them with strong role models through power networking, through panel discussions like we'll have this afternoon, engagement interviews, where they could begin to develop that professional identity of who they want to be and what they want for themselves. And so that has been happening semester after semester here at Georgia State. So, I mean, you're right, Isabelle. We have the best jobs in the world. I mean, I tell my family and friends to be doing what you love to do every day is great, but to feel like you were meant to do it is even greater.
So now, how are you kind of defining success? Is it one person at a time, or is there kind of bigger goals that you aspire to be? Is it going outside the border of this university and the country? Like,
so there are a couple of ways to approach the question, and then Isabelle can chime in. So much of our evidence of success was anecdotal from our students, but we're now engaged in a 5-year study approved by the university where we're actually measuring a student's growth of ambition over the 14 weeks of a semester. So we did that. The first run was in the fall semester of 2018.
What does growth of ambition mean?
So growth of ambition would be taking how you felt when you first entered the class. What was your confidence around public speaking? What was your idea about leadership within your chosen major? Do you then at the end see yourself as a leader? Those are measures that we can look at change over the course of that semester and then begin to gather the data and compare it. So we're just at the beginning. One of my colleagues, who's a political science professor, is working with her team and graduate research assistants to do a deep dive into those measures. And we just need the numbers to get a little bit higher before we can report out. But as you know, for sustainability of a program, and particularly when you're looking to corporate partners and to foundations, you need that data to show the overall success of the program. In terms of growth, there are different ways to think of it. We would love to grow the program horizontally. You mentioned 50,000 students at Georgia State, and there's a big demand for WomenLead. So within the confines of those pillars of the curriculum, we can offer many different intense subject matter areas. So we'd love to grow the program here on campus. And then my entrepreneurial friends say, you know, Nancy, you need to just tie it up with a bow and take it national. Mm-hmm. And you asked me at the beginning about our mission, about empowering young women. And the vision is really aligned with Georgia State to become a national model of success for women students. There's a national conversation around women. And what are we doing here at Georgia State with this course, this curriculum, with additional programming, with partnering to, again, put those students on a trajectory for success. I'd love to see it expand to other universities, to have a consortium or a meeting here at Georgia State, even just for all of the universities within the Georgia system would be a great place to start. We're collecting data on our best practices. So it's a big project.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done. Isabelle, you mentioned that women start the most businesses, but not a lot of women create $1 million or more ongoing businesses, right? The stats on that are pretty shocking as well.
So the good news is the stats are changing. So oftentimes to create a, million or, again, I think the stats are less than 3%, right? Mm-hmm. So, but oftentimes to create at scale, you need a few things. One of them is oftentimes you need funding. And there are many that I know of who've had to sell their business at a smaller stage because they couldn't get the funding. Although there is a strategy to actually invent a male co-founder, but this is not the most ethical of strategies. I was thinking something else. I don't know if it's appropriate to say on the radio, but so there's a few strategies to invent co-founders to make it work. But the second thing that you need is technology. So technology is a great equalizer. Because
That's why
it actually
Nat's
can make
eyes here.
There you go. And this is also why it's also one of the lenses that we are using in our design of the WomenLead in Entrepreneurship Innovation, is to actually allow women who now think big to build big. And so what Nancy was referring to, so that confidence, this is where it starts, right? If you don't think you can build a big business, you're not even going to reach out, create that big vision, or get the partners that you need. But if you can shift that identity, and they can own their ability to create something quite so monumental, then tools such as technology can actually help bridge the gap. And I have to say, it's beginning. A student came to see me yesterday and made me cry, in a good way.
Does that happen regularly?
It doesn't happen regularly. I didn't expect that visit, but this student came to see me. It's a student that was also graduating in May. I was asked to withhold, name details, but this student is actually just got a fantastic job in Silicon Valley, working for a unicorn at a staggering starting salary. But more importantly,
$1 billion.
Yes,
right.
Yes, and so I was so proud. But the reason I was proud is that student who's graduating in May is coming back and saying, "I want you to know what a difference the class made. And I want you to know that I will not forget. And I'm graduating in a few weeks, but I came to say thank you." And that's also success.
Right.
Not just the graduation, which we love, not just a fantastic job. And that was that student's first choice of company, which is also amazing. But that ability for the student to look back and to say, "I see what I got, and I'm committed to be of service. I will not forget. I will be back, and I will be the bridge," and that's success.
And I think that's one of the benefits of Georgia State being that university for that first generation of person going to college. That I think that because of that, they appreciate, what could be and what is now, and that they want to give back more than maybe somebody who is second, third, fourth, fifth generation in a family, right?
I think so. I think also they appreciate some of the support that we provide even more.
Right.
Because again, they're not taking it for granted. They can see the gap. And I think it's in places like this that programs like WomenLead, who actually, or all kinds of immersive education, which actually provide more than the traditional sort of lecture style, make a difference. We don't take anything for granted. We actually make sure that we design the experience so that we can produce the learning outcomes. And as I said, one of our big learning outcomes is that shift in identity and that confidence. And again, it's amazing that it may only take a few weeks. So Nancy was talking about 14 weeks to create, but that student was in my class 3 years ago. And so it was amazing to see that this is why I'm so excited about this research study. It can actually prove what we see every day.
Right.
But it's actually to see that it took 14 weeks to create, but 3 years later, look at what it's the platform that it's begun, that is created. And so it's both. Yes, I cried, but it's also extremely humbling because in many ways it's a privilege to do what we do.
Well, it's the program is the gift that keeps on giving, right? Here it is. You take the course 3 years later, it's still paying dividends for everybody.
It is.
It's impressive impact. Now, how can we help? What do you need more of?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I I'm going to start, and then I hand it over to maybe Nancy and that side. But so we love partnerships, and as we expand the program, we love to continue to partner with other entrepreneurs and leaders in the community. As I said, we have a fantastic cadre of women leaders and entrepreneurs, and we would love some more as we continue to grow the program. And it's also been quite wonderful to actually have a few male mentors as well. Find that they had a unique perspective, and as Natsai shared, we don't believe, again, we believe in inclusivity, and so this is one form of partnership that was wonderful. And I'm going to hand it over to Nancy for all the other forms of partnership and support that we would love.
Well, one of the things for support is just what we're doing today to get the word out about our programs and about what's happening here at Georgia State. Building partners has been critical to the WomenLead program, and that's come through a couple of grant requests as well as some corporate support along the way. And to build our program, we're going to need lots of partnerships across the city and across the country. And we're poised and ready to do that, I think, now that we're past the startup phase of our business with WomenLead. We always like to have individuals in the community to get involved in the program. We have a large number of Georgia State alums who have raised their hand. And in addition, just other interested parties who say, I'd be happy to participate in your events, to serve on a panel, to be a part of the program. That helps the program to grow and flourish.
So now if somebody wants to do that, is there a website or a kind of a place they can go to learn more?
Yes. Our website is easy to find. It's womenlead.robinson. There's lots of information there about the program and how to get in touch with us. Follow us on social media across all platforms where WomenLead, GSU, all runs together. And wow, I think we have well over 1,000 followers and lots of people watching what we're doing every week with the WomenLead program. So that helps to get the word out also.
And that's why, before we wrap, once again, our Journey Through Code coordinates. What's the website again?
Ourjourneythroughcode.com.
Good stuff. Well, best of luck with your ventures, and your future seems bright. I think everybody is bullish on you in this room.
Thank you.
Congratulations for all your success. And Nancy, congratulations for all your success. It's a wonderful program that's impacting lots and lots of people.
Thank you for the great conversation today. It's fun to share our story.
Well, thank you, Isabelle, for being a guest.
It was my pleasure.
All right. This is Lee Cantor for Stone Payton. We will see you all next time on Georgia State University's Entrepreneur and Innovation Institute Radio.